Hey, welcome back to WrestleMania Wednesday. I'm your host, Don, and today we are going to be talking about WrestleMania 31. This is a pretty awesome WrestleMania. This is a near perfect WrestleMania. Despite the fact that I have a couple complaints and quibbles, it's just quality. I think every match is pretty great. Even the Triple H match.
You're watching So Awkward. This is Freddy Krueger saying hi.
This WrestleMania is kind of special for me and nostalgic, even though it's only 2 years ago, because I watched this one live. I finally, at this point, I had the WWE Network, and this was the first WrestleMania I watched live since, I don't know, something in the mid-teens. Maybe like 12 or 13 or 14, somewhere around there. I was a fan again. I mean, over the course of my life, I've come in and out, depending on what's happening in my life or what's happening in WWE. But I was back at this point, so I knew a little bit about the storylines, and I had more of an investment in it. And I remember really enjoying it, and rewatching it, I liked it even more, just in comparison to all of the other WrestleManias I've watched on these past Wednesdays. Some of which have been amazing, and some of which have been duds. This one is great. As I said, it's nearly perfect. But we'll get to that. WrestleMania 31, it's March 29th, 2015. We're getting there. At Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California. They start things off with the Intercontinental title on the line in a ladder match. Champion Bad News Barrett is defending his title against Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Stardust, Luke Harper, R-Truth, and Dean Ambrose. That's a pretty quality group of wrestlers. This is just a really good ladder match with a lot of amazing wrestlers in the ring. Everybody's great. An exciting match. I think Dean Ambrose took the worst fall. He fell like from a ladder over the ropes onto another ladder that was propped on the ring and on like one of the announcers' tables, and he broke through it, and I think he probably really hurt himself. I think later on like Table for Three he talked about how they had to staple his head shut. You don't see that on TV, but that's what happened. But anyway, Daniel Bryan is victorious and becomes the Intercontinental Champion. Good for him. Yes, yes, yes. Next up, we've got Randy Orton versus Seth Rollins. I don't remember the story or the build-up to this one, but this was just a great match with two amazing wrestlers. This was back when Seth Rollins was the bad guy, and this was my favorite Seth Rollins. I like him as a hero, but he was so good as a bad guy, and I miss it. I think he should be a villain again. This one ends with an amazing finish where Seth Rollins goes to do the curb stomp, which was his finisher at the time. But when he jumps off of Randy Orton's head, and Randy Orton pops up and puts him in an RKO out of nowhere. And it's pretty fun and very memorable. And Randy Orton gets the victory. Next up is an interesting match. It is not just the WrestleMania debut, but the WWE/WWF debut of wrestling icon Sting. We've never gotten a chance to talk about Sting here on WrestleMania Wednesday. You know, growing up, I was a WWF fan. That's all I watched. I mean, I lived on the East Coast, so we didn't even really get that much WCW or whatever the other territories were. And then WWF took over. So I think you could see WCW on some channels, but I didn't watch it because I was a WWE loyalist. I still am. Like, I would buy the WWF magazine. I think I had a subscription. But my mother knew I loved wrestling. So every now and again she'd be at the store and she'd see a wrestling magazine and she'd buy it for me. And I would read the stories, and they would have pictures of Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and Sting. And all these people that I never saw until much, much later when they came to WWF. Except for Sting. Sting never came to WWF. And he started back in the early 80s, maybe even the 70s, and rose to the top of whoever the competitors were with the various different wrestling organizations. So of course I heard of him, and I had seen a little bit of him, but not that much. But I always wanted to because he looked really cool, and he was beloved by most wrestling fans. But finally, in 2015, towards the end of his career, because I think he actually finally retired last year, he finally came to the WWE on the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania 31 against Triple H. And this match is great. This is by far my favorite Triple H WrestleMania match. A lot of people have a problem with this match because Sting loses, which is odd. You'd think he's an icon. 30-year-long career, and he finally came to the biggest wrestling promotion that's ever existed at WrestleMania just to lose. Very strange. Nobody still understands why he lost. I don't understand why he lost. But I don't let that bother me because it is a really fun match. And the guys, they both have really good chemistry together. The story they told in the ring was fun. I think you could view it not as Triple H versus Sting, but as WWE versus WCW and the independents. And if you look at it that way, as like an allegory of the companies, it makes sense why Triple H won. But it's still a little weird. You could tell everybody was rooting for Sting, and you could tell the crowd was kind of disappointed when he lost. But it's a fun match with a lot of cameos. At one point, Sting is beating up Triple H, so DX comes out. And then once they start to brawl, then the NWO come out, which is Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan. It was a love letter to I guess what I would call the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars. So I think you could view this match not as a match between these two competitors, but as an allegory for the Monday Night Wars themselves, which I think justifies why Triple H won. But I was still rooting for Sting, because Triple H sucks. But anyway, really fun match, and really cool to see Sting finally get the recognition he deserves as a star on WrestleMania. And then we have our Divas match of the night. It's a tag team. It's Paige making a WrestleMania debut, and AJ Lee versus the Bella Twins, Nikki and Brie Bella. This is a pretty fun match. This is the point where, and maybe even last year, I think they had a pretty decent Divas match, where the female wrestlers become really good. Paige is maybe my favorite female wrestler of all time. I met her at Wizard World last year. Insert picture here. She was super nice and so pretty and charming in person, and that was an honor to meet her. There's some stuff about her in the press recently that we won't talk about, and I think it's a shame because she is an amazing talent and one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, and I would love to see her back in the ring. And this was a great match. This was a lot of fun. AJ Lee and Paige get the victory. And then we go to a fun little backstage vignette where Daniel Bryan is being interviewed because he's just won the Intercontinental title. And then all of these old school former Intercontinental champions come out and kind of give him props and put him over and pass the torch to him. We've got Pat Patterson, Roddy Piper, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Ric Flair, Bret Hart. And it's just really sweet and really fun, and good for Daniel Bryan. He deserves it. He deserves to be featured in the same conversation with all these great wrestlers. This is probably the last appearance of Roddy Piper at WrestleMania, because I think he died pretty soon after this. So, rest in peace, Piper. And now it's time to give it up to the Hall of Fame class of 2015. We've got the Bushwhackers, Larry Zbyszko, Alundra Blaze, Tatsumi Fujinami, Rikishi, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Macho Man, finally inducted posthumously, Kevin Nash, otherwise known as Diesel. The Macho Man is finally in there. Nobody understood why he wasn't inducted sooner. It's because I believe Before he died, he said he didn't want to go in because he had some bad blood with the WWE, and so his family didn't want to put him in. But they finally, his brother Lanny Poffo, finally realized the fans needed it. They needed that, his induction to the Hall of Fame, to have closure, and he knew that the Hall of Fame was kind of meaningless as long as Randy Savage wasn't in there. So I think it's good. It's good that he's finally in there. But other than that, I don't know much about Tatsumi Fujinami. Larry Zbyszko probably deserves to be in there. I mean, all these people, I'll say they all deserve it. They all had great careers. But I don't know. Next up is a match for the United States Championship, which I don't think we mentioned in like 10 weeks or longer. And champion Rusev, making his WrestleMania debut, the Bulgarian Brute, versus John Cena. Rusev is awesome. He's a great old school style villain where he's a communist and he hates America. It's just he's got an old school feel to him, but he's a really great athlete and a really charismatic character. I like him a lot. His entrance was amazing. He drove to the ring in a tank, which was pretty badass. A lot of fun. And then they had a pretty good match. This was not the match of the night, and this is nowhere near either of their best matches. Certainly nowhere near John Cena's best matches. But it's a pretty solid match, and it's fun. It's just not amazing. And both of these two are capable of amazing matches. So maybe it was a bit of a letdown. But John Cena prevailed and becomes the new United States Champion, where it rightfully belongs, on an American. Next up, we've got this weird moment where Stephanie McMahon and her husband Triple H, who are now the Authority, they're the evil president and CEO or whatever of WWE, and they come out and they complain about the crowd and they blah blah blah. They do their evil thing and talk about how they control everything and blah 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 blah. You know, they do their James Bond villain shtick. And then The Rock comes out and puts him down, and Stephanie McMahon yells at him, and she tries to kick him out of the ring, and I think she even slaps him because she slaps everybody. And The Rock will not hit a woman. So he goes out into the crowd and he finds Ronda Rousey, who at that point was the UFC Women's Champion, total badass. And she comes into the ring. And she gets into it a little bit. They do a back and forth with the Authority, and then finally she beats the crap out of Triple H, and then she beats the crap out of Stephanie and kicks them both out of the ring. And it's a lot of fun, and it's cool, and you can tell they're building up for something. Maybe the next WrestleMania or something. But there's a couple problems with it. First of all, it goes on for at least 20 minutes. It might even be longer than that. This should have been a 10-minute exchange. This was maybe longer than any of the matches even. They gave this much time to Triple H, who already had like a 30-minute match with Sting, which was great. And then The Rock comes back, and I don't know, it was just so boring. In the middle, like it started strong, and it ended strong. But the 25 minutes in the middle was just so boring. And the other problem with it, and this is not their fault, is a little bit after this, Ronda Rousey loses the title. She suffers what some would call a humiliating defeat. I don't think she should be humiliated. I mean, she got her butt kicked, but that's what happens in the UFC. I think maybe she was humiliated a little bit because she hyped herself up and she made all these movies when she should have been training. I think she fought again and then she got her butt kicked again. But so that kind of ended her momentum and then did not bring her back. So this just ended up going nowhere, so it kind of served no purpose. But it would have been really cool to see Ronda Rousey versus Stephanie McMahon in a real match. Or even Ronda Rousey versus Triple H. That would have been an awesome match. They could have had 2 matches or something in the time that this took. They could have had a Fandango match. There's no Fandango. This would have been the perfect slot for a Fandango match. Next up, we have the return of Bray Wyatt and The Undertaker in a pretty fun match. The premise of this was, I think, something to do with like Bray Wyatt wanted to be the new face of fear and the supernatural in the WWE, so he challenged The Undertaker to take over the mantle. And this is the point where The Undertaker only wrestles at WrestleMania. He just comes back once a year because that's all he has to do, and he's old. He's like 50 something at this point. So he comes back and he's ripped. Like he's in the best shape. He's in better shape in this WrestleMania than he's been in the past few years. So it's a really good match. This was a great one. I really liked it. Undertaker wins, of course. So I guess Bray Wyatt is not the new face of fear, although he is currently the champion in real time. So Bray Wyatt bounces back from this defeat. Anyway, I don't know. This was just a really cool match, and the Undertaker's now what? 22-1, and that brings us to our main event for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's champ Brock Lesnar defending against Roman Reigns, the most hated man in the WWE, even though he's supposed to be a hero. I love Roman Reigns. I think he's one of my favorite wrestlers. I think he's great. I think he always goes out there and has great matches. I think he's got a cool mystique to him. I buy into it. I like him. I think he's cool. But a lot of people hate him and they boo him because he's not Daniel Bryan. He's not the guy that the fans want to see as the champion. And as the fans don't want him on Wheaties boxes, but Vince McMahon and the WWE want him on Wheaties boxes. But I think he's great. I think he's underrated. And this match is awesome. This might, in fact, be the best WrestleMania main event that I can remember. It's just so much fun. It's so brutal. It's so exciting. It's the story has all these twists and turns, and it had me on the edge of my seat. Even rewatching it, it's just so much fun, and it's so well done. And both of these two, who get a lot of flack from the fans, Brock Lesnar does too, because he tends to phone it in sometimes. But this might be Brock Lesnar, his best performance. Just, he sells it. Like especially when he starts to bleed from his forehead after getting his face smashed into the ring post, and you feel like he's gonna die. I'm complimenting his acting, because he's a giant ogre. He didn't feel any pain. He feels no pain. He would have eaten Roman Reigns in a real fight. And then at the very end, when they're both just look like they've been through hell together, Seth Rollins runs in because he's the Money in the Bank champion. Which, remember the Money in the Bank that's no longer on WrestleMania. That hasn't been for the past 10, because now it has its own pay-per-view. And the Money in the Bank is where whoever wins the briefcase, inside of it is a contract that you can present at any time to challenge the champion to any match for the title. So he runs in and he cashes in the Money in the Bank contract. So this becomes a triple threat match. And they're both about to die. And I can't remember what exactly happens. Brock Lesnar, I think, is about to throw Seth Rollins out of the ring, but Roman Reigns comes out of nowhere and spears him. Then Seth Rollins does like a flip and lands on his feet, and he curb stomps Roman Reigns, and he pins him, and he becomes the new champion. Twist ending. It's like M. Night Shyamalan directed this wrestling match. I really like this one. This is one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time. I think it's perfect from start to finish, and I think all three guys just put on an amazing show. So that's WrestleMania 31. All in all, just a great show. The bit with The Rock and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Ronda Rousey was boring and went on way too long. It should have been 10 minutes, and then they should have had a Fandango match. But the matches themselves were all really, really great. They were all great. There wasn't a bad match. I even liked the Triple H match. Anyway, that was WrestleMania 31. Stay tuned for WrestleMania 32, and then we'll be caught up to real time, and we'll watch WrestleMania 33 on April 2nd. which is pretty exciting. But until then, I'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks for watching.